They claimed the matte black solar roof was destroying neighborhood harmony. Karen Whitaker, president of the Oakwood Estates HOA, smiled that plastic smile of hers and told everyone I was a threat to property values. The truth? It was never about the color. It was about the underground spring bubbling quietly beneath my backyard, and the fat $360,000 commission she stood to pocket if she could force me out before the luxury resort developer pulled the plug on Monday. I remember the afternoon I finished installing those panels like it was yesterday. Sun glinting off the sleek black surface, my two-story house on the corner lot finally feeling like mine after the divorce. 12,000 square feet of manicured suburbia stretched around me, but my lot backed up to the greenbelt with that natural spring feeding a small pond I'd turned into a koi habitat. No one told me what shade my shutters had to be. No one cared if I parked my old truck in the driveway. Peace, real peace, the kind that settles in your bones after years of beige everything. I stepped back, wiped sweat from my forehead and thought, this is it. Home. Funny how the same roof that gave me that moment would become the match that lit the whole subdivision on fire. Trouble didn't knock. It glided up in a golf cart wearing designer sunglasses. About a week after the roof was done, I was hauling groceries when a white envelope appeared tucked under my welcome mat. Gold foil crest. Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. The letter inside was so sweetly poisonous I almost laughed out loud. Dear valued neighbor, it began, then immediately pivoted to how my visually disruptive matte black finish negatively impacts the approved earth tone palette and community cohesion. Community cohesion? In a neighborhood where half the residents waved from behind tinted windows, and the other half reported each other for grass 2 inches too long. I read it twice, folded it neatly, and dropped it straight into the recycling bin. Problem solved. Or so I thought. 3 days later the drone showed up. Tiny white thing buzzing like an angry hornet just above my fence line. Camera lens aimed right at the roof and the backyard pond. I waved. It hovered longer, then zipped off toward the clubhouse. That night I double-checked every lock and started keeping a notebook by the window. Not paranoia. Pattern recognition. People who fly drones over your house at dusk aren't collecting footage for the HOA newsletter. The real storm arrived on a Saturday morning dressed in Patagonia and fake concern. I was pressure washing the driveway when she rolled up in her white Lexus, clipboard in one manicured hand, smile stapled in place. Karen Whitaker, president. She stepped out like she owned the sidewalk. Mr. Carter, she cooed, voice dripping honey and razor blades. I wanted to personally welcome you and discuss how we can bring your beautiful home into alignment with our standards. I kept the hose running. Alignment. She gestured at the roof like it had personally insulted her ancestors. The black panels. They catch the light in such an aggressive way. We have a beautiful taupe palette book I can drop off. Many neighbors have found it transformative. Many neighbors, I repeated, letting the words hang. Funny, I haven't met them yet. Must be the same ones who sent the letter and the drone. Her smile twitched just a flicker, but I caught it. Drone? Oh goodness, some of our board members enjoy birdwatching. Pure coincidence, I'm sure. She leaned in like we were sharing a secret. Between us, a more community-conscious choice would go a long way toward avoiding unnecessary paperwork. I shut the hose off. Water dripped in the sudden quiet. My house. My roof. My choice. She scribbled something on the clipboard, the pen scratching like nails on a chalkboard. Of course. We're always here to help with harmony. Then she snapped a photo of my roof with her phone. No shame, no hesitation, just click. As she walked back to her car, she called over her shoulder. You'll be hearing from us soon, Ryan. For the good of the neighborhood. The good of the neighborhood. Right. The envelopes started coming daily. First a warning about potential unpermitted solar modifications. Then a blurry photo of my pond circled in red with the caption, Ecological Concern Zone. County inspectors began appearing at the property line, asking to test runoff, check permits, measure setbacks. One guy even wanted to know if my koi were affecting migratory bird patterns. I smiled, nodded, and documented every visit on my phone. Quietly. Patiently. Because something in my gut kept whispering that this wasn't about paint chips. The pieces clicked together at the corner store. Bob, the retired mailman who'd lived here since the subdivision was built, waved me over near the beer cooler. "You didn't hear this from me," he muttered, checking over his shoulder like we were in a spy movie. But Karen's been wound tighter than a cheap watch. Yelling on the phone outside the clubhouse about deadlines and water rights. That new resort phase they're trying to push through? The one with the fancy wellness spa? Turns out your backyard spring sits right on the aquifer they need. County rejected their easement request last year because the water's on private land. Yours. My stomach did a slow roll. And Karen. Bob tapped the HOA newsletter on the counter. Rumor is she gets 5% if the deal closes. Do the math. Big luxury development. That's a nice chunk of change for the woman who's been preaching protect our community for 8 years. $360,000. The number landed like a fist. Suddenly the drone, the inspectors, the sweet little letters, all of it made perfect ugly sense. Karen wasn't protecting Harmony. She was protecting her retirement fund. And the clock was ticking. Monday was the developer's deadline. I drove home slower than usual, watching the perfect lawns roll by, every blade the exact same height, every mailbox the approved shade of beige. The whole place looked like a postcard someone had ironed flat. But underneath the perfection, something rotten was spreading. And I was standing right on top of it. The next morning a battered pickup I didn't recognize crawled up my street. Out stepped a guy in his 30s wearing a faded conservation group vest. "Morning. Name's Todd. Western Watershed Watch volunteer. Just checking properties near the Greenbelt, making sure everything's flowing clean." His eyes kept drifting toward my backyard pond like it owed him money. I handed him a spare pair of work gloves. "Since you're here, help me move some rocks around the spring. Drainage issue." For the next hour we worked side by side while he peppered me with questions. "How deep's the water table? Ever notice chemicals in the runoff? That drainage ditch connect to anything downstream?" I gave him vague answers and watched him file every word away like evidence. The next day he was back. And the day after. Always helpful. Always smiling. Always measuring my land with his eyes. On the third afternoon I stepped out to grab firewood and found it behind the woodpile. A small unlabeled plastic bottle filled with cloudy liquid, placed exactly where rain would wash anything straight into the spring. Not mine. Never been there before. Perfect setup for an emergency environmental hazard claim. I didn't touch it with bare hands. Gloves, tongs, placed it right back. Then I climbed the ladder and strapped a trail camera in the branches above. Silent trigger, night vision, perfect angle. If Todd came back to discover his own planted evidence, the camera would catch every second. That night I sat on the porch with a beer, watching the subdivision lights flicker on one by one. Somewhere down the street Karen Whitaker was probably rehearsing her next polite threat. She thought she was tightening the noose. She had no idea I was already holding the rope. The next 2 days Todd stayed away. Smart. He'd found nothing in my shed the afternoon he helped move rocks, so now he was waiting for the right moment to stage his big discovery. I decided not to wait with him. If Karen wanted a contamination scandal, I'd give her one she'd never forget. I spent the morning at my workbench building a battered manila folder. Inside I slipped fake documents I'd printed the night before. Forged permits with typos, misspelled county seals, a variance request that any real inspector would laugh at. I scuffed the folder on the concrete, smeared sawdust, bent the corners until it looked like it had been tossed aside months ago. Then I tucked a tiny GPS tracker into the spine, the kind you can buy for $20 online. I left the shed door cracked, folder half visible on the workbench, bait in plain sight. Around sunset I caught movement near the fence line. Todd, shoulders hunched, glancing around like a kid stealing cookies. He slipped into the shed. 20 seconds later he emerged with something tucked under his vest the exact shape of my folder. I watched from behind the curtain as he hurried to his truck and drove straight toward the HOA clubhouse. My phone pinged, GPS blinking its way right into Karen's parking lot. Confirmation. The HOA had just accepted fraudulent documents from their own plant. The trap was set. The next morning a white HOA-branded SUV crept up my driveway like it was apologizing for existing. Two guys in cheap security uniforms stepped out clutching a bright red notice. Mr. Carter. Emergency Hazard Enforcement Order. 24-hour demolition notice. Your property presents an immediate chemical contamination threat to the watershed. I took the paper, scanned the fake county seals, the forged signatures, the emergency clause that didn't exist. So you're here to bulldoze my house because of a bottle nobody tested, under authority you don't have? The taller one puffed up. We're authorized to secure the perimeter. I set my phone on the porch rail and hit record. You boys realize impersonating county officials is a felony, right? Before they could answer, tires crunched on gravel. Karen's silver Lexus slid in behind them. She stepped out in full battle armor, winter white coat, scarf perfectly draped. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Ryan. We have every right. No, a new voice cut in. Sheriff Harlan's cruiser rolled up, lights flashing lazy red and blue in the morning sun. The sheriff climbed out slow, the way men who've seen every kind of stupid do. He glanced at the notice, tore it in half without reading past the first line. This is garbage. Karen's face went from porcelain to cracked. Sheriff, this man is endangering the entire community. Harlan didn't raise his voice. Ma'am, you have jurisdiction over your own properties. Not his. Not the spring. And definitely not whatever imaginary buffer zone your board dreamed up last month. He looked at the security guys. 5 seconds to get off private land before I start writing tickets for trespass and impersonation. They left so fast their boots barely touched the grass. Karen stood alone, jaw working like she was chewing glass. I stepped closer, voice low. 2 questions, Karen. If you really thought my pond was leaking chemicals, why didn't you call Real County Environmental Services? And why did your volunteer Todd bring everything straight to you instead of the sheriff? Her eyes widened just a fraction, but it was enough. The sheriff folded his arms. Strong suggestion you leave while this is still civil. She spun on her heel, stormed to her car, and hissed before slamming the door. This isn't over by Monday. One way or another. The engine roared. Dust settled. Bob pulled up a minute later in his old Ford. Heard the whole thing on the neighborhood scanner. You good. Better than good, I said. She just made her biggest mistake. For 2 days the subdivision went quiet in that way that feels like someone holding their breath before screaming. I knew Karen wasn't done. She'd lost the legal route, lost the inspectors, lost the planted evidence play. So she went for the one thing she still controlled, optics. Saturday morning my phone buzzed. Bob again. Check the HOA Facebook page. Now. I opened it. Top post in screaming red letters. Unity Day, protect our waters. Livestream noon. Show your support for community safety. Karen had turned my backyard into the villain of a public morality play. Perfect lawns, kids with flags, burgers on the grill. All to bury the poison in something wholesome. Right before noon I set up on my porch, phone ready, trail cam synced, GPS still blinking. The HOA stream went live. Karen stepped to the microphone in a pastel blazer that probably cost more than my first car. Friends, we gather today to protect what makes Oakwood special. Our water, our unity, our future. Behind her the crowd nodded like trained seals. Then she pointed straight at the greenbelt. Today our volunteers will walk the watershed boundary to demonstrate accountability. Translation. They were coming onto my land on camera to find the bottle. I hit my own live stream. Folks, looks like Oakwood Estates is about to take a field trip to my backyard. You might want to watch what happens next. 10 minutes later 12 HOA members marched up the slope waving little blue flags. Todd led the pack, clipboard out, heading straight for the woodpile. I stood at the property marker Sheriff Harlan had installed years ago. Next step is private property. You're being live-streamed on both sides. Choose wisely. Karen's voice crackled from their own feed, loud enough for thousands to hear. Keep walking. The first volunteer stepped over the line. One by one they followed, trespassing in real time under direct orders. Todd reached the woodpile, gasped theatrically and pointed. Oh my God, what is this? He lifted the bottle exactly as my trail cam recorded every frame. Chat on my feed exploded. I panned to the replay, Clear as day, Todd planting the bottle days earlier, returning to photograph it, lifting it now like he'd won the lottery. The HOA volunteers backed away from him like he was radioactive. Karen's face disappeared from her own stream the second the panic started. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old grudges. By 9 a.m., the hallway was packed. Neighbors, reporters, retirees who'd brought popcorn. My lawyer Tom patted my shoulder. By noon this will be over. Karen sat at the defense table in a navy suit that looked like armor. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Todd wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Judge Riley entered, thick eyebrows already frowning. Let's get this HOA nonsense sorted. Tom stood. Your Honor, emergency evidentiary packet. Exhibit A. The courtroom TV lit up. First clip. Karen's own Unity Daystream, her voice barking keep walking, as volunteers crossed onto my land. Judge Riley leaned forward. Is that the HOA president ordering trespass? Second clip, my trail cam. Crystal clear. Todd planting the bottle, photographing it, discovering it live. The gallery gasped. Todd's face went gray. Judge Riley snapped. Planting evidence is a felony, son. Start talking. Todd broke in under 30 seconds. She told me to. Said we needed proof of contamination. Said the county would fast-track an emergency claim if we had video. Karen's ears turned scarlet but she stayed stone-faced. Tom slid forward. Exhibit B, bank records showing repeated consulting fees from the resort developer. 5% commission, Your Honor. Roughly $360,000 if the spring was cleared. Judge Riley turned to Karen. Is that true? Her lawyer whispered. She ignored him. This community needed protection. With forged documents, staged hazards, and hired security, the judge shot back. You violated every section of the State Common Interest Ownership Act. Harassment. Fraud. Unlawful eviction attempt. He slammed the gavel. Effective immediately, the Oakwood Estates HOA is dissolved. All board powers terminated. Sheriff's deputies will escort Mrs. Whitaker and Mr. Todd into custody pending fraud and evidence tampering charges. Gasps rippled through the room. One board member started crying, not for Karen, but because she realized their dues had been siphoned into this mess. Karen finally looked at me, eyes full of pure venom. I just nodded. Checkmate. Outside, reporters swarmed. The resort developer released a statement the same afternoon disavowing Karen completely. Her house went into foreclosure 2 weeks later. The beige lawn stayed perfect, but the fear was gone. 6 months later I finished the second building out back. A small guest house with a bright forest green roof I chose myself. No one told me it was allowed. I called it the Freedom Shed. Word spread. People from 3 counties started showing up. Folks tired of HOAs finding them for the wrong flowers or the wrong flag. I sat them around the fire pit and walked them through plat maps, public records requests, boundary cameras, and how to push back without losing your mind. Tom handled the legal side. I handled the common sense. One afternoon an older couple left with laminated folders and actual hope in their eyes. The lady hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for showing us we're not powerless." Down the street Karen's old house sold at auction to a young family who asked me about the wiring on the patio lights. I shrugged. Nothing that works anymore. We laughed harder than the joke deserved. That night I sat on the porch, lantern glowing, listening to the spring bubble softly in the dark. The subdivision lights twinkled like nothing had ever happened. But everything had. I looked at the tiny blue Unity Day flag I'd framed above my desk. A souvenir of the day the Queen lost her crown. Freedom, I realized, tastes sweeter after you fight for it. Especially when the people who tried to take it end up buried under their own rules. So here's the question I leave you with. When an HOA Karen abuses her power to chase a 6-figure payday and gets exposed, dismantled, and dissolved, was she the real victim of overreach, or was the homeowner who fought back with cameras and live streams the actual criminal? You decide who was truly in the wrong.